All right, good morning, cyber traders. Welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop this Tuesday morning, July 18th, shortly after 11 a.m. Eastern. Great to see all of our students and members alike here. We have Grant, Kathleen, we have Ravina, Ryan, Jith, Elizabeth, we had John just before, a whole bunch of us actually from the morning session. Great to have all of our students and members alike there. Great to have actually all of us today on YouTube this afternoon or this late morning, perhaps joining us. So great to see all of our members on social media here this morning on top. So first and foremost, for any of our new attendees just joining us here, just allow me to introduce Traders Talk, our weekly workshop. We conduct this workshop inside our live trading room every Tuesday morning, and soon to be on social media on YouTube every Tuesday morning, as well as simulcast to be said. So we welcome on board all of our new members joining us. But this workshop is the only workshop out of the entire week, out of the entire curriculum, that we provide real education inside our live trading room. In our live trading room, we provide call outs. We provide real live commentary as far as what a stock is doing. But if you were to go back and ask, well, why is this stock making the move that it's making? Or for the stocks that we put on our morning watch list, why? Not just that they're moving, those are call outs. Hey, AI making a lower high here, pulling back to 40. That's a call out. But why did this stock make the move that it made? For other trades that we had from the morning session, the cheaper stocks like BPTS, MICS, Hyper, and all these. Well, hey, for those that wrote me earlier, hey, we always suggest, if there's any trades or questions that you'd want to go over, email me first. We got a bunch of emails that came in from Jith and Ryan and Kathleen and Antonio and a couple more. So, let me know if there's any questions that you'd want to go over here, folks. I'd like to begin with this AI move because, it was one that was not on the morning watch list per se. Palantir was on the morning watch list. It was on the pre-market list. It's cheaper AI stock. This stock, C3AI, AI is the ticker. This obviously we are very familiar with. It's on our side list. So we called it out from the market open, but for all of us here, you could see that I don't have any lines on this chart. So it goes to show I didn't really plot anything out for this trade. I don't know where the real entry levels were, where they could have been. So with that, let's actually kind of unzip this trade and go over this from head to toe and really just kind of see why. Right. And that's the real question that we're here to answer in Traders Talk. Now, really quickly, just for Abdul and any of our new members joining us, if you happen to have an audio issue, it might just be on your end there. I just told Abdul here in the chat just to log out, log back in. Now, let's kind of go through this trade to begin. For all of our members here, otherwise, hey, even if you're on social media, if you followed Fausto in the morning meetings, myself when I do the afternoon meetings each and every weekday, you might know this. For Grant, for Jeff, or Ravina, I know you know this. Where are we most likely to find our key iceberg levels? You look on level 3, you look on level 4. We'll look at that in just a second. But if there's one assumption that you can make, where are we more likely to find these icebergs, especially for a more expensive ticker like AI? There we go. Ryan and Ravina saying 50-cent levels and whole numbers. So for a more expensive trade like AI, I'd even just go the whole number levels, meaning 38, 39, 40, 41, etc. I'm going to plot all these lines here just to begin. I can just expedite and just kind of do without, but I want to show you the full picture. So really, we'll kind of just plot a few of these to begin, just 39, 40, 41. Now, if there's icebergs at other price levels, then we'll look to plot those too. And especially if those prices have larger orders, significantly larger orders compared to these, then we'll respect those even that much further. So what I like to do is I like to look back on Bookmap here. I'll go over level 4 early in the morning. If I was very vested in following this trade AI for the market open today, meaning if I was looking at this in pre-market and deeming it tradable and like, okay, I'm definitely going to get my hands on this at some point. Well, you want to take the time to plot out where the big icebergs are. So the whole numbers are all levels that we assume, but even for reference in pre-market here for this morning, there was nothing at 40 bucks. It's an assumed level, but there's like nothing really respected that's there at the time in pre-market, only about 4,000 shares. If I zoom out on this whole picture, well, it's easier to kind of see some price levels that show big volume. For instance, actually all the way at the bottom here, it's kind of a funkier price. The price 37.20, roughly, there's about 21,000 shares on the bid there. So regardless for any stock, I feel 21,000 is pretty large. But it certainly shows here that's the darkest red line going across the page. It's there the longest. So definitively, if this pulls back, if it were to, 37.20 would be a key level for me to keep an eye on. Obviously, 38 as a whole number, an assumed level. Well, this certainly shows about 10, 11,000 shares on the bid there. So, that actually is a defined level to watch. There was something here as we zoom in a little bit closer into this going into the market open. Little something here around 38.70, 38.65. That was for about 10,000 shares. So fairly big. Perhaps you could plot a smaller line around this like 38.65 or so. Now, outside of just that, what we could even do and go a step further on is let's actually just go back to yesterday's book map. Were there any big levels from yesterday? Well, yesterday, yeah, there were definitely some large prices to watch out for here. First, you could say 39.50 right here. But the big resistance, and this was the assumed level for this morning, didn't show anything in pre-market this morning, but at $40 yesterday, there was a key level there, a big iceberg for about 50,000 shares roughly. So you still have to respect that as a level going into the next trading day. There's a level up top here at 40.25 in case if this popped higher. We can go further on that. But what I really want to show you, though, is this. Let's see how important this became as a level today, or maybe even later on as we follow up on this trade heading into the afternoon. But what we tend to follow outside of the orange and red lines up top on Bookmap and down below, especially if there's a really large dot like this represents the closing bell print from yesterday afternoon on this AI trade. It's a conglomerate of orders that represent about 290,000 or so shares at 38.73. So, hey, you'd like to think for that much shares, that much volume being traded at that price, that 38.73 should be a key level to keep an eye on for the market open today. Okay. So we have this as the closing bell print from yesterday. We have 38.65 is a little iceberg level, nothing too big. Okay. And then let's just see what happened here when the market opened up. The opening bell print from today, it's actually the same price, 38.73. Get a load of that. So it's not as often that happens. Hey, it makes our lives that much easier. 38.73 is a definitive level to keep an eye on. Okay, great. Now with that, let's just ask our students this question really quick. For all of our members inside Cyber Group, if you're joining us today on social media, hey, I'll pop this QR code up right now. Just if you're fancy with your phone, you could join us. Grant, Kathleen, Ravina, all of our members inside our live trading room, just scan that QR code that's popping up on the screen there to join us there. But for all of our members inside our live trading room, I'd want to ask you, if you look at your watch, you look at the cyber clock, right? What are we doing in the first 3 to 5 minutes? The first 3 to 5 minutes of the market open, what are we doing? Are we trading or are we not trading? We're not trading, right? As I grab from my water cup. Ryan says, wait until the smart money shakes out the dumb money. That's my go-to line. I like that Ryan says that. And Jit says, hey, look for that opening bell print in the first 3 to 5 minutes, right? Not trade, right? So that gives you the time to actually go on Bookmap and say, okay, let's say market opened up, ding, ding, ding. Okay, 38.73, that's the opening bell print for today. Let's plot that line on this chart. Because in the grand scheme, this looks like it shook around 38.73 quite a bit before it popped, right? Okay, well, if you're waiting the first 3 to 5 minutes like we suggest, looks like you're not really dealing with a lot of this shakiness to begin. Because by the time the first 5 minutes comes, it breaks under these levels. And then at that point, you're thinking there's a chance it continues to dump. There's a fair chance right at this marker here, once it breaks down below the yellow and the blue lines here, there's a realistic chance it can keep dropping. So you don't want to catch a falling knife. You can't really look to just take a trade on the way down or in between levels. That's where I could tell you there is one shake to it here. There's one volatile shake where it pulls back again. But once it begins to break back over the opening print, right there, basically, that constitutes your initial entry on the trade. So perhaps there is a chance where you get stopped out if you're very conservative and keep a really tight stop. Well, certainly it gives you a second chance where 2 bars later, it breaks back over this level again. If you're it's just to say, right? Every trade begins with the entry. Well, entry point. But even before that, well, AI ran well yesterday. What's to say it can't run well again today? So you have to have your own sentiment as far as what you think the stock is going to do. I'm not just throwing a dart on the wall and hoping it lands. For any of my students that, joke like, oh, Josh, you always call Mara out. You think? Well, why do you think? Because I think that over time it's going to continue to go up long term. So why not look to have that on my side list? And if I do see it move up, I think that that could be a good intraday play too. Well, the same is to be said with AI. The same was to be said for a long time with the stock and with PLTR, right? This isn't our first rodeo with AI. Ever since the beginning of this year, if you thought AI was going to move up higher, then how could you not at least have this on your side list day to day? We didn't call out AI and trade AI every day over the last 1 to 2 months, mind you. But after yesterday's move, and we called it out then, why not think that this could make another squeeze? So if you personally had this on your main watch list, you were, looking to sink your teeth into this trade, and you think, okay, I think that there's a chance where this can at least get up to 40. I can make maybe $1, maybe 50 cents, heck, on a good trade, maybe $2 on this move. Then you're going to plot out your levels. You're going to wait for this to either make a breakout to where it just pops resistance cleanly and you take the break over, or you have to wait for support to build. In the case of this pulled back at the market open. The first 5 minutes, it shook around, and you had to wait for this to build back over this level, mainly the 38.73, in order for this to be a good trade. So this was the first entry, but there could have been multiple entries on this trade because, hey, over time, this was already nipping and gnawing at $39, the next whole number level ahead, right? So if you were more just focused on your whole number levels, this still made a really strong move across the early parts of the morning. At first, in the first few minutes, it ended up shaking it. Even on this one, it popped and dropped it again. What happened on the next attempt, though? If you stick with the trade, and even if you took a small loss on this attempt and in and out quick, like, oh, shoot, not the right time. Well, hey, on the next attempt, this broke through this big level. Let me ask us here, Glenn, Jith, Dave, Kathleen, Ravina, Charles, Ryan, etc. When a stock breaks through a big level, what are we expecting shortly after, folks? Just very generally speaking, what are we expecting? A big move, right? Hopefully it's a nice move, Jeff. Hopefully it's a nice move. Nice meaning in our direction. So you're expecting a big reaction, big move. Well, thankfully on the next attempt, it sure makes a nice move, Jeff, right? This makes a big, nice move up. Let me ask us, when a stock breaks above resistance and runs off of it, resistance should initially look to become support. Bingo, right there. And then it led to the breakout higher. And still to this moment right now, it's doing a fair job. It's holding support, holding higher lows. I don't know what the VWAP is on this trade right now. Let me check that. They're getting pretty close. VWAP right now is like basically right at 40, 39, 90 or so. So there is a chance where this does look to shake a little bit lower and then perhaps goes higher later into the afternoon. Hey, if it holds higher lows from here and goes, I'll be happy. But it looks like there was a bit of an iceberg that just got pulled right now live at 39.50. So we'll see what happens to that order. Maybe they move up higher, build up a ladder. It's possible. But, that's just really the trade I wanted to start with because, hey, I didn't trade this today. I called it out, but I wasn't as hyper focused on this at 8:30 Eastern time in the pre-market for me to try and take a trade. Now, let me ask you, I gave the answer just earlier. What stock is on our morning list that moves fairly well with AI? It's essentially a sector type of play. It's an AI type of stock. What stock is on our morning watch list that moves with AI? Bell and James saying, and Scott and Ravina, yeah, all PLTR. A chart of PLTR, that's for sure. So yeah, PLTR, this ended up making a nice drop at first, made a nice drop at first. And I took a 5 or 6 cent loss on this initially. Once this broke under 1750, I took it on the first test of support here and then it stopped me out. But it ended up leading to a great trade later on to where this ended up building off of support off of 1726, 1730, higher low. I was on a coaching call with my student earlier, basically just saying this built out really nicely. Like the morning move here. Built out nicely. It was a good move from 1740 to 1785, 1783. That's a very good trade if you were able to get some good meat off the bone there. even if this pops up higher later into the afternoon, from this bounce, I really wanted this to break out higher sooner. So, if you were able to lock up 40, 50 cents on this trade, but it took you like an hour and a half to get the job done, of course you're happy with the money, right? And especially the more shares you trade, bigger profit. Of course, the happier you'll be just no matter what. But if you're expecting a particular type of move and it takes you much longer to get that move, there's still a point of like dissatisfaction where it's like, oh man, that should have taken me much longer. This wasted my time a little bit, right? Because of course the volume faded off on this trade early. It did move up to my designed resistance. Yesterday's closing bell print. No, my apologies. This morning's opening bell print, that being the red line at 1783. And then from there it pulled back. Right here, right? 1783, the opening bell print from this morning. From there, it held as a resistance. It held yesterday's closing print here as support. 1740, 940,000 share block print got filled there. Well, over time, this built around that as support. Other levels here at 1730, etc. that I showed. But here's where this became support again. 1740, it broke under and over. Beautiful entry. Led to a squeeze back up. So this is kind of back in no man's land here in between levels. It doesn't look nearly as good at this point. So unless if AI continues to surge and this can somehow gain more momentum upward again here soon, I feel like this is bound to just continue to make lower highs here. It doesn't seem as great. One thing I could say, actually, loosely speaking, if you're following me on PLTR across the afternoon, I don't like playing with trend lines too much, and this Ryan will segue me perfectly, at least to Mara. Nah, that one's not good. That's not a good one. All right, so you got nice little correlation here off the lows. Built a nice little trend line off the lows, if I can at least. There we go. All right, so if this could hold as a trend line, maybe it breaks under and over and goes. But if this could hold, then we're still in good shape. It's actually really quickly because Ryan mentioned Mara. I have to go through a bunch of email questions. Jith, Ryan, Kathleen, Antonio, Anthony, and maybe one or two more on top. I have to get to you folks in just a second. Mara, I did not look to get my hands on at first. So I charted this stock today. I didn't really get my hands on it from the morning session. And then I tried looking for it going into 10:30, but my hands were already full of PLTR. So I missed this. Thankfully, I missed it. But this trade had a really, really interesting trend line. I think that you could just simply see it looking at the daily chart. Nice steady trend off the lows here, right? See that there where my cursor is? So what I did was I actually, and I don't really do this too frequent. I don't have as much time in my hands to go like this focused on it. But I went back like 30 or so days and like to really kind of make this on a 1 minute chart. I zoomed in all the way on a 1 minute chart to get this for us. Let me show you the end result. There we go. So basically, I'll try and make this easy on the eyes because I have a bunch of lines on this chart, horizontal lines. But basically from late June, I built this trend line off the lows perfectly. And this is what you see here, this purplish or this, I just messed it up right there. This greenish line right here was the trend line. And yesterday it ended up retesting it perfectly on the 1 minute. And then it snapped it. So obviously you see what happened today. It ended up just kind of moving up and pulled back. Well, it came pretty darn close to that trend line. It essentially became resistance and then led to a pullback here. So over time, just generally speaking, if Mara could somehow get back above this trend line, it's so sharp on the way up. It's a very tough ask. If anything, I would expect for this to be more as resistance over time. But perhaps this could build back above this line again. And should it, that would lead to like a really strong continuated pop back up over time. Very doubtful, I'd say, at least across today's move. But goes to show how simple support could become resistance over time. All right, so let's take a look at my inbox here. I got a bunch, so I'm going to make sure I go through all of them. If I don't get to you first, no worries. I see your emails that come in. So let's start. Actually, a really quick one from one of our new members, Rose Rise here. I say, quick one because really this one is just easy for us to say, where Rose Rise was asking just about a few different indicators, Ichimoku Cloud, how that could work with the trend of a stock, and also one called OBV, meaning on balance volume, right? So these indicators, I personally don't, let me retract that. Ichimoku Cloud I've played with before, and take that literally, just like I don't use that to take any trades with. I use it to like mess around and play around with, like on my own time when I'm not trading, when I'm studying. I've seen it, it looks cool. Okay, let's just poke around at it. That's it. On balance volume, I've seen, but I've never really used. In general, indicators we rarely look to use when it comes to trading. There is a class that I teach in the phase 2 curriculum we devote towards indicators, but it's more like volume-based indicators, the VWAP, the volume bars here. And then we'll dip into a couple very common indicators like MACD, RSI, et cetera, et cetera. So, from there, perhaps you can kind of hear us talk about a couple. But outside of that, our primary tools are level 3 and then level 4. So level 4 meaning Bookmap, the heat map program here that you see. That's what Fausto always shows in his webinars, and we use this like all day, every day. So if you have Thinkorswim, we have a bunch of new members joining us here, so I should say this. If you have Thinkorswim, you can get level 4 directly on the platform. You would have to call it Bookmap, Bookmap. I got a dry mouth here. So Bookmap. You have to call up Thinkorswim and ask for them to put the Bookmap data on your platform. It's about $40 a month through Thinkorswim. The full version has a couple more features that you could work off of, though, and you can go right to Bookmap's website, at least for that. But they're going to be able to show you everything when it comes to the order flow, just where the orders are currently located, where the orders were located from earlier today, and so forth. But that's primarily what we use. So we don't want to use too much on top. Like, hey, for any of our students that, or for any of our new members, I'd rather say, because if you're a student, then you're likely using what we're teaching. It's to say that if you're a new trial member joining us, and at the end of your trial, you say, all right, well, for whatever reason it could be, ABC, this isn't for me. I'm making money using moving averages and just basic charting. All the more to you. If there is something that you're making money consistently, more days of the week than not, or every day of the week at that, then stick with it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I'd like to think there's a reason why you're joining us here. If you're looking to learn new strategies, right? It's because perhaps the strategy you're using right now is not working. Whether you're losing money or maybe you're just not making the type of money you're looking to make. Maybe you're profitable, but you're just looking for that next thing that could take it to the next level. Whatever it may be, it's simply just for me to tell you that less is more. You don't want to have too many monitors up on your screen. You don't want to have too many charts on your monitors. You don't want to have too many damn lines on your charts at that, right? Look at Mara here. I got too many damn lines on this thing. I got to zoom in to make it pretty. It's just less is more. So with strategies, the same is to be said. I don't want someone using 15 indicators, then trying to study this. It's not going to go well. It's not going to go well. That's where in the past, like I have laid off on certain things myself, even though they're extremely useful, moving averages being one of them. It just took my attention span away from level 3 and level 4. And that's what's made me money more than anything. And Fausto, of course. So it's just to say, all right, I'd rather stick with what makes me money, what makes me more money at that. All right, so a couple questions that came in from Jith. I'm going to go in order, though, Jith. So I'm going to answer your first, then we'll jump around and get back to you just on your second. So Jith asking, how do you trade stocks like MICS? Made an entry at 214. Before I sell, it pulled back to 198. He sold it, and then later it bounced back higher. Basically, it shook him out. How do you make an entry on stocks making nice moves if we missed to make the first entry? For example, RX last week. So let's go to a couple of these here. So this Mara trade's dumping off, isn't it? MICS, another stock I did not take the time to plot here for this morning. Perfect. I got the book map up, and it's easy to say that the stock popped at first, but then moved back down. The entry that Jith referenced was at $2.14. Jith, was this during the market open or pre-market? I don't have the time of the entry that you gave there. Okay. Can you give me the exact time of your entry if you can? For anyone, just if you're looking for me to review a trade, you got to give me the price and the time, just because it kind of kills the time here for everyone else that's listening. So it's just most efficient. Especially, I had a student actually got back late yesterday, so I had to clear out all my private messages. And this one came in like late in the afternoon from Donald. I didn't see this from him until like at night. So for Donald, if he's listening here, he was asking, just about journal reviews and saying, just some videos that he saw from like 2018 where I reviewed different trader logs. Am I still doing this? I review all trades in coaching sessions and then otherwise in Traders Talk for just anyone here publicly. If you would want me to anonymize the trade, always let me know first, and I look to do that. Anything good, I give you the spotlight on. Anything tiny, I feel it's no problem. Just to say it's Jith here, mention the trade, and it got in at 8:19, and all right, we'll take a look. Sweet, there we go, 8:19 in the morning. Basically, this candle, give or take, right? Okay, so what led to the entry? Was 215, 214 a good level? We'll find out. Because this popped suddenly at 8 o'clock. There's no real data on this before 8 o'clock. And again, your primary focus on this should be level 3 and level 4. So you're really just kind of keeping your eyes on this here. Now, Jit said he got in at like 8:19 in the morning. So this is still prior to his entry. The question is there a key level for us to work off of? When I look at this heat map, it's really tough for me to give eye on any one price that looks big. You assume 2 to be a big level as a whole number. But outside of that, there is like some line here at 233. It's not like a dark red line, though. It doesn't seem that dark beat of a line. It doesn't seem that big. And it's only 6,200 shares. That's not that big. So there really isn't much here prior to the entry. At first, there's still more to come, where this could lead to a good trade. Now, it comes back up to test 2. This is about 5 or 6 minutes prior to Jith's trade. It breaks over the VWAP in white, but it's really 2 that's the assumed level. It doesn't show much at 2, but that's the only price that you could assume for there to be a level. So it pops over it here, and then suddenly, of course, conveniently enough, as soon as it breaks above 2, you have a 21,000 share order on the bid. It popped up actually a few seconds after, or a minute after, this one here at 170. So this doesn't designate your entry, this iceberg popping up. It's really the break over 2 that designates your entry. Like if these icebergs weren't here, this still is your entry. The fact that these icebergs popped up is the icing on the cake. So perhaps should this look to hold over 2, we could have a strong trade here. No go. And this is just perhaps right before a rebreak. So let's see what happens on the next attempt. It ends up pulling back down under the VWAP even. It's a nasty trade. On the next attempt, it rebreaks above 2. This order seemingly moves up. And then this is where it pops higher. So there wasn't really much before, there wasn't really much above 2 that I would have been like super interested in for an entry, Jith. It would have just been 2 at that point, just being an assumed level. And with the iceberg that popped up at 95, this could have been a great attempt, and perhaps you would have been shaken out. But on the next move above the level, on the next attempt, you essentially look to get what you want, right? It ends up squeezing up a little bit higher. It holds over 2, and then you have your run a little bit later on. Now, is there a level later on, though, that becomes pretty strong? There isn't much here. There's really not much there that, like, really I'm too happy to see. Even the shakedown is, like, pretty nasty. After it breaks above 2 again, this should fly. So the fact that it holds over 2 and takes its sweet time isn't really my cup of tea. I'd rather just run sooner than later. But otherwise, I mean, I guess maybe 215 builds out as a level later on, after your original entry at 219. Because here, once it begins to retest, it still takes another damn test here. This is a very choppy trade. So this is one where I'd be kind of grinding my teeth like, take a break-even trade here. But if you stick with the trade and are trustworthy of the levels that you're trying to jump in from, seemingly, it's easy to say this, but seemingly on the next attempt, it does provide what you want there, right? It makes the better of the 2 moves up. So, hey, there are plenty of trades out there that are easy for me to narrate and say, oh yeah, it made this move. I jumped in here, did this, did that. 2 was a good level. Damn, did it take some time. And then 215, that still took time itself just to build out as a level. So this was just a tough ass trade. For anyone that's new joining us, not Jith per se, just blanket statement. For any new students joining us, I understand from my side of things, for as long as I've been with Fausto at this point, I understand it can be discouraging to get stopped out on a trade or to take a loss. You can't use stops in pre-market here, mind you. It just, if you get stopped out on a trade and the sucker moves up right up on you minutes later, it's frustrating for anyone. Now, if you do that fairly consistently, if that happens to you quite often, I know how frustrating that could feel. Like myself, I've had that experience in the past. And, for the students I coach one-on-one, I hear it from a number of us at first. It's natural. It's natural. Don't think it's abnormal. Because the key is, hey, we're not robots. We're human beings. So emotions seep into our minds when it comes to dictating, oh, I did this bad. I did that bad. Well, I'll tell you, if you had a good entry on this trade, if you took a trade from a good level, this thing was still damn tough. So I will say, Jith, from the trade that you took, 215 became a level later on, but not at first. And then still either way, regardless, this thing was just a pain in the ass. It took like 15 minutes for it to move off of $2. I'm sorry, he corrects me myself here. He says 214 was the entry. Still though, 215 became the level, and that was later on. And then 2 was the better of the entries anyway. So it's just that either way, regardless of it, whatever it is, it's tomato at this point, because this was a grinder of a trade. It's not my cup of tea. I don't think it's your cup of tea. This is one where I don't want to just ignore if you're frustrated about getting shaken out, but it's one that you can't beat yourself up as much compared to a smoother trade. Think about it. I'm not saying a stock that's flying, a smoother trade. Like, for example, SoFi yesterday, for as slow as we know SoFi is, so we're not expecting this to be a fast trade, this was a smooth runner. From the market open, it popped, it maintained a nice trend off the lows, it eventually popped higher there, right? We're expecting that out of this one stock. Well, hey, out of, what was it, that one trade there, Jith? What was it, that stock? The MICS? I have no real experience trading this one ticker. So from the naked eye, it looks like just some cheap low cap stock that could possibly explode. Well, if you're thinking that and you jump into this trade and it becomes very choppy and just rugged, all right, well, it's unexpected, but that's not your doing. If you're expecting like a $2 move on SoFi, I mean, that's kind of your fault. This, though, is like a cheap stock. It's like, okay, there's a chance where this thing could like freaking rip. So you have to try and be quick to take the entry if the entry's there, but just don't beat yourself up too much if you got shaken out on this thing. I have to say that to myself after a trade, if it looks like this, because again, we're all human beings. It's not like I'm a robot speaking to you folks here. I'm a human being too. Got a few 4-letter words that come out of my mouth every now and then. So of course things can be a little frustrating at times. And yeah, I mean, hey, you have to kind of think in hindsight. Even this, really quick. Go back just a few days ago, Delta, right? My forever enemy now. Delta came out with good earnings last week, raised guidance. The thing tanked, right? I don't want to talk too much about this otherwise because there's other stocks to go over. But man, I had such a good idea to capture support on this trade right when the market had opened up at first here, but then it ended up pulling back. I think this was the day, if I'm not mistaken. It's just on that day where Delta reported down earnings, or I'm sorry, on that day where Delta reported good earnings and they raised their guidance, I was expecting a nice pop and I didn't get what I wanted. Well, you know what? Hey, you got to move on to a different trade, right? In hindsight, it ended up dropping off a lot more after I got out, and things could have been much worse in the grand scheme of things. What day was that even? I got to go back on that. Pardon me. That was on the 13th, not even the 12th. I got to go another day forward. Yeah, this is the day. So I tried getting in on Delta early here, I think off support. Sucker just kept dropping. Totally threw me off. I had a good idea. Just didn't work out the way I was expecting it to. So As long as you're not turning that into a ginormous loss, and as long as you're getting out shortly after the stock begins to pull back and not make that big move that you're looking for, fair play. All right. Question from Anthony, Antonio, Kathleen, Jith, Ryan, and then a couple more. We got a bunch actually coming in really quickly, folks. So I got to make sure I go through all of these here in time. If I don't get to you just before we finish up, I'll make sure I write to you on the side here. So from Anthony, could we review the methodology and considerations to shortlist stocks in order to create the side watch list? Okay. So not to shrug this question off, right? We're going to answer here. But I go over this a lot in the phase 2 class, the phase 2 course. We're going to do this coming up in August next month. So, next week we actually have the phase 1 curriculum restarting for the month of July. And then from there, we're going to do August classes the following month. Well, that's where I dig a lot into scanning, and I dig into how we could build up a side list and, just essentially how I could look to scan for stocks on a day-to-day basis. So one thing that you can kind of understand when you're doing this day-to-day is that, like, if you're just using a regular volume list, just say like most active in terms of volume, you're going to find a lot of the same stocks on near the top. You get your Teslas out there, you get your AT&Ts out there before the big drop the last few days. This has always been one of the most active stocks by volume. You got a bunch of cheap crap too, though, like V-Ray, GoEv, MULN, that's always at the top. But you'll still get some stocks that trade a ton of volume. Hey, that's nice. That trade a ton of volume that have been very volatile of late. Palantir, Rivian. Ford's not volatile, but Ford you could slip in there for my guy Bill Ireland here today. Carnival, CCL. Keep going down. Hey, my old friend Neo. SoFi, Mara, my new best friend. So a lot of the stocks that you see there are stocks that trade a ton of volume on a day-to-day. But it's not even just the volume side of things that you want. You do want to focus on volatility. So on TradeStation, this is just something I play with. I'm just messing around here, folks. So this is not like an official CTU criteria. I'm playing around here. So, I'm just kind of testing some things with float and just looking at the outstanding shares and whatnot. But essentially, I'll focus on the average true range. Let's just even jack this up a little bit. That looks good. Let's even raise this up just a little bit. I don't know, make this $80. Who knows? Just play around with. All right, so I'm going to run this scan here. And what we're going to find basically are stocks that definitively we have called out over the last 1 to 2 weeks, 1 to 2 months. This could finish up. Now, regardless of whatever list this pumps out, what I have to do is I have to basically consolidate this list to a group of 2 or 3 or 4 stocks. And really, I'm not trading every one of these. So if there's something that shows high volatility or, trades a large number as far as the average true range, the day-to-day move that it makes, well, look what's number 1 on the watch list here. If I can link my charts properly. Carvana, right? Obviously, Carvana up 10% today, but it's been so volatile of late, it makes one of the biggest moves in relation to its price. So Carvana, Wayfair, Roku, Upstart, of course, from yesterday. Square, here's our friend AI. New high of the day there, that's cool. Our new friend Unity, which partnered up with Apple on the headset stuff from last month. Roblox. Now, this is just all sorted by the average true range. So that's not the end all be all, but if you're looking for a more volatile stock, that's just how you want to sort it out. And then otherwise, really just, I don't really have any other way to sort it out by I'll just focus on the stocks, perhaps trading the most amount of shares, then plug on there, Carvana, etc. All right. Now, just either way, even if this pumps out 30 stocks here, folks, I'm looking at 3 of these 30. Maybe throughout the day, I'll just kind of click around. I'll click around and just see and see and see. That's really it. So that's where kind of I'll be able to kind of scan around. But otherwise, more often than not, I'm sticking with the ones that I've been sticking with. AI, Carvana. Plug of late has been good. I haven't been as trading that as much. Mara, of late, last 2 days, Sunrun. So I'll definitely be more mindful to focus on Sunrun. Riot moves with Mara, so if one goes, the other goes. I'm not going to focus on both. That makes no sense. Just focus on one. BBIO is not really one that we'll see on here over time routinely. It just news came out on it yesterday and had some crazy move up. I would be doubtful to say, I'm going to say it's doubtful for this to continue to be on the sideless scan that I just pumped out here, because I think the volume is going to fade off over time and probably see it lose its lust. All right, so really quickly, I just want to make sure I go through just all these emails, and we'll make sure that we finish up just with the chat here. So Antonio asking, not sure if you can give some input on this. I recently set up an LLC to help deduct expenses for tax savings. However, it came with a software system I purchased at no cost. However, the company that drew up the LLC doc is offering to file the taxes for it and my personal taxes, which I've done on my own for a few years or 4 years, for a fee. I feel I'm able to file the taxes on this LLC myself. The fee would be $150 per month and the initial fee of $2,900. Honestly, I'd rather spend that money on more tolls for trading, as I feel my expenses are mainly education and software related fees for trading. Any thoughts? No rush. So what I could tell you with going through an LLC, just the only input that I'll be able to actually give you on this, Antonio, well, I'll give you 2 inputs. I'm going to reference a tax accountant here that Fausto has long referred our students to, Robert Green, New York-based tax accountant, financial stock market related tax accountant. So with that, he gives free consultations. He could at least help you out there. What I could share with you otherwise is that if you don't know this just yet, for anyone unfamiliar with LLCs and trading through them, you're going to be listed as a professional. What does that mean? Well, let's ask us here really quickly. How much is the NASDAQ book viewer, the simple NASDAQ book viewer product, right from NASDAQ.com? Does anyone know how much that is per month? Anyone know how much the NASDAQ book viewer is? If you go right to datastore.nasdaq, it's $15 a month. If you are a professional trader, if they realize that you're a professional, you're paying $74 a month. Look, it's on the NASDAQ website. It's right there. It says professional, non-professional. Well, on TradeStation, you're paying about like $43 a month for their NASDAQ data package number 3. That includes the book viewer stuff, but it includes some other stuff that they want to upcharge you for. But at least it's extra. You can get more data there too. $42 a month. I'm not complaining. It's like $160 a month if you're through an LLC. So just be wary that you're going to be listed as a professional trader. You're paying super high data fees, more likely than not. That's just the only input I could really give you there, Antonio. Oh, really quickly, let me also drop that link there for Robert Green there, just in case if anyone else is interested. There's free consultations. He's worked alongside Fausto for a number of years, and Fausto's referenced him in the past to other traders. That's his website right there, just inside our chat board. All right, let's keep the questions going, though. So from Kathleen asking, and this could be in relation to a question actually I skipped from Jith right there at the end of his first email. When you have a stock that's up but not hitting your target, how long do you give it? Or is it not really a question of time, but something else? Okay, so let's actually kill 2 birds with 1 stone, Jith. Let's go back to RXRX. He had actually asked this on his first email. He was asking basically, how do you make entries on stocks making nice moves already? Basically, if we had missed out on the first entry, like the better level, how do you jump in? All right, so we'll kind of answer both questions using this RXRX. Oh, I guess I'm already 25 days back. Cool. Okay, there we go. Nice. Well, it popped and dropped back from what, the 12th? Pre-market trade there, just to answer if you're asking about this. This was on an enormous spread in pre-market. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend for many to just jump in this trade. You got to wait for support to build. If it keeps going up without you, I hate to tell you this, actually, I don't hate to tell you this. You probably hate to hear this, but If this keeps moving up without you, and the spread is 30 to 50 cents at least, there's other fish in the sea to catch. Now, with that, what's easy to say is after the market opens, this completely dumps, and there's no trade after this. Even if the order book fills in on this more, there's no trade. Just it ends up consolidating. You might try an entry as it bottoms out, but then it goes nowhere. Okay, then the following day or days, let's try and reference that, Jeff. Let's try and kind of answer your question at least on RX. Let's do it from yesterday. I mean, hey, this is what, yesterday, just the 17th? Finally, it made a move back up again. Okay, let's just use it here. I bet you the order book filled in a hell of a lot more. Let's try and go to level 3 right now. This is live right now, RX. So I'm assuming this is the type of liquidity it had from yesterday. So yesterday, it moved up really well, and the liquidity was very tolerable. So let's answer that question on this move here, Jeff. Not the 30 to 50 cent pre-market spread where you can't set a stop and you're just rolling the dice. Here, a little bit saner. So either way, how do you make an entry on a stock after it's already made a nice move? Well, again, it kind of boils back to if it breaks resistance and flies off of it, you have to wait for support to build, whether it's at that price or if it's from a higher low. So let's just kind of reference this. It breaks out at first at the market open, it pops. One thing that we're wary of is that we know that reversal time is around typically 10:15 to 10:30. So if we're not in this trade yet and it's beginning to pop higher, you say, okay, well, what's our next big level? Is there a price where this could look to either hold support or a price where this could look to at least test resistance a few times over? So I'm kind of drawing the reference from you missing the trade from here and it pops up without you. Okay, well, let's see if support could build. I'm just being very shoot from the hip here because obviously it's easy to say it bounced from right around 1260-ish, 1250-ish maybe. So if there was a resistance that this broke above, then if you're looking for resistance to become support, easy to say here, I'm just telling you, but it looks like it nips under and back over and then it continues. That's the first step. Otherwise, retests are your best friend. Remember, retests. So the more times that this is nipping at resistance, whether it's like 1290-ish or the 13 level over time, well, the more times it's testing resistance, it should look to pop it. And then resistance should hopefully, keywords hopefully, because easy to say it moved up higher. There's a chance here heading into reversal time that it might die off sooner than it does later. So there is a chance that this pulls back, but you hope to see resistance become support. So from there, it ends up moving up a little bit more, and then from there even. Wow, this is actually a pretty strong support level today, this 13 bucks. So across yesterday afternoon, it broke under and over, moved up again. Not to say that just because you missed this run here that you only look for this move once again today, but it actually provides another chance to look for 13 as support if you're hyper-focused on this trade, that is, at least here, under, over, big move shortly after, right? Now, to go on Kathleen here. So when you have a stock that's up but not hitting your target, how long do you give it? Okay, so let's just go back towards Cyberclock again. So if we're expecting reversal time to be around 10:15 to 10:30, maybe 10:45 on a healthy day, that's where the slower it's taking to make that move to your resistance, you say, it's like, does it become worth holding on? Because we know that for as much as these stocks do move up, they could certainly shake down very quickly, quicker than they take the time to move up. So if Kathleen's up, let's say 40 cents on a trade. Let's say Kathleen's up 40 cents on RXRX. Let's say Kathleen deems that as a big move, which it is. I'd say it's a fairly big move. Let's say Kathleen doesn't make 40 cents a share on a good number of her trades. Let's say she's profitable every day, but she's not hitting 40 cents, let's just say. Maybe she does. I'm just giving part of my criteria. If you are a trader that does not consistently pocket 40 cents a share and you're up that and you're realizing like, oh, it's not necessarily hitting my target yet, it's a few cents away, well, I'd rather get out. I'd rather take the money and run. You could always look to get back in over time, not necessarily right away. But hey, if this keeps moving up and it pops that, let's say it hits your target, not only hits your target, but then blasts over it. All right, just like we said to Jith, when a stock breaks resistance and runs, resistance should at least initially become support. So it could provide an opportunity for a reentry, right? Set a tight stop after just so it doesn't break a lower low, but it provides that chance for you to reenter. So it's not always as much a question of time, Kathleen, which I love how she phrased it that way. Because I could tell just the way it was phrased, she's thinking pretty in depth about just kind of anticipating stock movement and what to look for more often than not. So it is a question of time. It's not only a question of time, though. It's a question of distance, how far the stock has already moved on the day or even from the last day. Let's say, for instance, off the top of my head, if I were to go back to the morning watch list, perhaps here even. I mean, yeah, we could go PLTR. I don't know why I just wrote plus. My dislike. PLTR. There we go. We can go PLTR. This was up big yesterday, right? I got too many lines on this chart. This stock was up big yesterday. It wasn't up big in pre-market. It wasn't up that 5% that I would normally put a stock on our pre-market watch list for. It was up like 2%. But you know what? Because of yesterday's pop and move that it made, I thought that there was a chance to see support build out at some point today. Now, if this like really explodes and somehow just moves to $20 sooner than later, well, eventually, the faster it goes, you do think that it's going to pull back, right? That's not really the case here. So if this continues off this trend and builds higher lows, I'm not really thinking it's accelerating too fast, especially looking at the move that it made yesterday. If it made this type of explosive pop here, why can't it make that type of pop again? So, at least seeing what the stock has done across the last couple of days in terms of a serious run beforehand or not, that could play in part with my thought of, hey, is the stock going to be exhausted sooner than later or later than sooner? All right, and then again, just also kind of just looking at timing of the day, the volatility of the stock, and also just the order book too, seeing if it's very illiquid. It's not something that you want to really stick around in if it's moving slower because, yeah, I mean, an unexpected shakedown, you could lose 15, 18 cents of unrealized profit quite quickly. So I know from experience, as does literally every singular student here in our room, just because I don't think anyone here would be happy about losing 18 cents worth of unrealized profit. What's that phrase for someone who enjoys pain? Was that a masochist, whatever? You might be one of those if that's the case. I think everyone here is not a fan of losing 18, 15 cents worth of unrealized profit, especially on some crazy 5-second shakedown, right? So it's easy for me to say take the money and run sooner, but there are criteria that plays in part with that. Folks, we're running over time after 12 o'clock right now. If you're joining us on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, etc., hey, if you're interested in joining our live trading room, just do me a quick favor. If you're fancy with your phone, just scan that QR code right on the bottom of the stream right there to join us, to join Kathleen and Ravina, Michael B., and all of our students here live. But we got a couple more questions, and we're going to stick around all together and finish up. A little overtime here, Traders Talk. So from Ryan, a couple questions that came in from him. Question 1. Should you implement a wider stop, such as 30 cents, when trading a volatile stock such as Rivian, which tends to easily shake 30 cents at any time? So I'm going to answer this question in a different manner, Ryan. You didn't use this phrase I'm using here, but basically what Ryan's asking is, if you use the average true range, the indicator, average true range, and put it on the 1 minute chart. Let's say if you see a stock moving like, 10 cents a minute, does it make sense to use a stop that's like 10 cents or so, right? What Ryan's saying is for Rivian, which shakes like easily 30 cents at any time, should he use a stop for around 30 or so cents? It boils back, Ryan, it all boils back to how you enter the trade. Because if you're looking for support on Rivian and you take a clean entry, but the thing is not bouncing, like let's just say, for instance, here, this is a good example, 25 on your Rivian. broke over resistance, moved off it about 40, 45 cents. Good. Stock breaks resistance and runs, resistance becomes support. Seems like there could have been an entry here once it breaks back over 25, right here. However, it doesn't make the higher high at the time, right? It doesn't make the real run you wanted initially. It makes it here later on. It's not for me to tell you that you should be holding on to a trade as it drops 15, 18, 20 cents down. And then when it suddenly pops up, it's like, oh yeah, making money. I'd rather, like, let's say if you jump in here where my cursor is and you don't get out in time and it pulls back, I'd rather take just the dinky profit or at worst break even trade. At worst, maybe a 3 or 4 cent loss. I don't like giving up a big profit to then flip it into a negative even. I'd rather just go break even at worst, but fine. Maybe even if it's a couple cent loss, I would rather that. And then if I'm watching the stock later on to take the same trade, if it affords me the chance to, I'd rather all of that compared to me holding on to a trade that I was up already, then I'm down, and then we're heading into 10-15. What if this fails to pop back up? You might be trying to find another trade that could be trending better, and heck, you might take your eyes off Rivian. You have your stop set, but there's not much of a need to set a stop that wide. For students that I've seen set stops that wide consistently, they don't really understand the reason as to why they're making money over time. They might take clean entries, but they don't really see the difference between a clean stop out where they should have gotten stopped out right away from the level versus like just, yeah, you could hang on here for 5 cents, 10 cents here or there. I'm not going to hold on to a trade for like 15, 20 cents or more than that. The more expensive the stock, the wider the stop. That plays in part with it. The more volatile the stock, you do think of that too. But 30 cents for Rivian, I think, is pretty deep. 30 cents for like NVIDIA could be something to think about. If you're trying to kind of compare it in relation to a price I would use, 30 cents for NVIDIA, just shoot from the hip, could be something, I'd think about there. All right, give me a quick second here. From Jith, going back to Jith's question here. Second email. We were watching Nikola. I see that there are multiple large icebergs, big out there on the ask from $2.62 onwards. So I was expecting that the stock would never break that resistance as those are really piles of large icebergs. Okay, so market opens up. We're after the first 3 to 5 minutes. What's the direction of Nikola, folks? Direction's up, right? Now, when we look at Nikola book map here, let's start with just like the heat map, or let's start with the pre-market. In the pre-market, where this really wasn't moving much at all, it really wasn't moving well. 270 iceberg, 290 much larger iceberg, right? All right, when the market opened up, obviously the order book will fill in for any trade. This becomes more liquid, more orders out there. But how big is big? 250, you would assume for that to be an iceberg or a big level, and, we'll count that. There's 260, 265, 270. Are all of these big levels, are all of these as equally strong? No. Hell no. 290 is definitely the biggest one out there. And in relation to where the stock starts off, 250 is the first big one. So once it truly begins to pop this, and if it could flip it into support over time, that gives me the chance to believe it's going to run higher. So first 5 minutes, it popped it. I wanted this to be support. I was calling this out to be support. It pulled right back to the level, under the level, and that was it. It didn't break under and back over. When a stock breaks under support, folks, and it drops from support, support should initially look to become what? Resistance. So I'm not going to be as gung-ho, as keen to jump in on this next test. But the more times it nips it, the more times it tests it here, it should lead to the pop higher. So yeah, 250 was the better level to have entered from initially here at this point, Jeff. It topped off around 264, but Pre-market, there wasn't a whole lot there. There wasn't really anything that distinguished around those prices, at least compared to 250 and what was ahead eventually at 280, I guess, but then 290 up top. So the point is for me is that I'd rather take the trade from the bigger level. So 250, I didn't jump in here. I jumped in here. When this broke resistance and ran, I missed the move. So I was a little frustrated at first. I saw that run up without me. I'm like, come on. So on the pullback, I was hoping for this to be support again. Not just hoping, but resistance. Support. You got the VWAP there too, which is nice. And then from there, it led to the pounce higher, right? But where did this ultimately top off? 270. Where did we have that first pre-market iceberg? 270. Broke it, pulled back, right? So, it's not as in terms of answering Jith's question directly there. It's just more in the relation of saying, how big is big? Don't let something that has a hyper liquid order book, as we'll call it, a hyper liquid order book. Don't let something like that throw you off because, all of these orders are pretty big. I mean, hey, you got 143,000 at 160. On any other trade, that's massive. On this, today, that's not a scratch on this thing, right? So that's where I have to tell you, it all starts from pre-market. How big is big? 270 seems to be pretty big in pre-market. 250 became pretty big when the market opened up. And those were the two better levels to work off of on this trade. All right, folks. So with that, let me just go through the chat here to finish up from Michael B asking here in the chat, what is the best way to determine your target? I don't have enough time to answer that question, Michael. If you want to chat me on the side, perhaps I could work with you through private chat on that. Otherwise, coaching call one-on-one would be the best bet. Or the classes, hell, just going through the phase 2 curriculum where I teach this. Preparing to trade the market open, that specific class, I go over how I set all my lines up for the stocks I look to trade. PLTR. It's trying. The fact it broke over this opening print line, it definitively needs to hold this as support. And the fact it's above it here leads me to think, well, now is as good of a chance to try and look for that as any. So, folks, let me just see if there's any last emails or questions I have to get through to finish up. If you'd sent it in after 12 o'clock, folks, I'm going to chat you on the side or just later on this evening. Jim sent this one in at 11:09 this morning. He's the last one I'll get to here. I'm going to try and go through this quick, Jim. It was actually on Nikola, so it's a good. We could at least try and go through this quick on Nikola here. So Jim, just observing, made some money, and the attempts from the market makers or institutions to control this was fascinating to him. Nikola looked like a Rocky versus establishment trade this morning, like David versus Goliath type of thing. Since the open, Bookmap showed big time support at 220. I'm going to go over that. Let's see. Not as big at 220 in relation to all the other levels that were there at the time. Even like you could say 205 was big there, 205 too, right? But 220 not as big, right? That's where I just mentioned to Jith, right? It's good to go over this one just right now too to finish up, but don't let a hyper liquid order book confuse you. Bookmap there is your best bet. Always. That's why like reading the heat map makes it so much easier to kind of make that distinguishment. As Nikola broke and ran, it crushed the market makers' efforts to get it to slow down. I haven't seen too many stocks with such high volumes get crushed on the way up. Well, the cheaper the stock gets, the more liquid it becomes. And then eventually when the shorts cover, it's not always going to lead to a perfect trend. Nikola was moving last week for us. So it cooled down a bit. And then thankfully, this is the easy to say part because we're seeing it here and we saw it from the morning. But if there's a chance for the stock to show good activity early in the morning, then we'll follow it. This popped right out the gate. So it caught our attention early. All right. The short squeeze continues. So whatever news came out on Nikola, it certainly led to a good pump up, but this is also just a short squeeze given how much the stock had dropped off, over the last 2 years, 3 years, ever since our guy Trevor Milton ended up running the show. That guy was a disaster from the get-go for this company. So, we've been following Nikola for quite some time, and for a stock that makes this type of extended drop-off, you got to expect for the shorts to cover eventually. Folks, finito. We're done. We're wrapping up here. A little overtime here in Traders Talk for this edition. Now, if you're joining us on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works, join us if you're interested in continuing our audio commentary throughout the remainder of this day. The whole chat board, the screen showing, we're going to look to continue this throughout this afternoon. Our afternoon meeting will be simulcasted, though, at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Then we'll have Rich on the mic. My colleague Rich will wrap things up for us going into the market close at 3 o'clock. So if you're interested in joining us, Elizabeth, John, Kathleen, Ravina, Leda, Kathleen, Michael, James, etc., all of us here joining us today. Got a large crowd for a Traders Talk today, too, which I appreciate much more so. So if you're fancy with your phone on social media, scan the QR code right down on the bottom right there to get access to our live trading room. Otherwise, though, hey, for all of us there, just we'll catch back with everyone live just coming up later on this afternoon at 2:30. Take care.